Hey y'all, and welcome back to Mulberry Ranch Farm. Today, it's actually Thanksgiving Day morning, and I wanted to bring you guys along on one of my favorite dishes to make. I make this during Thanksgiving, and we also make this a lot during the Christmas time, so I wanted to show you guys how I make my stuffed mushrooms. So first thing is first, what kind of ingredients are you going to need in order to be successful with this recipe? Obviously, you're going to need some full-capped mushrooms. They'll look a lot like this. You're going to need bacon, cream cheese, minced onion, garlic powder, milk, flour, and cheddar cheese. Now there are things that you could go ahead and add into this. Some people like green onions sprinkled on top, and you'll find that a lot of these ingredients are interchangeable. I am one of those cooks that I don't really like to go by set recipes or set amounts. I kind of just listen for the ancestral voices in my head to tell me it is good. And lots of taste testing throughout the entire process. So throughout this process, if you decide you want your mushroom filling to be creamier or more cheese, obviously you're going to add some more of specific ingredients and maybe less of others to get what you like. Let's start making our stuffed mushrooms, but first we're going to have to get out our mushrooms and we're gonna have to clean them, because even though they come in packaging like this at the grocery store, they're still a little icky, and you'll find that there's some dirt and things on these mushrooms. We're going to rinse them off in a colander to get them ready to process. So I like to rinse mine off in not completely hot water, just kind of lukewarm, just enough to kind of loosen up any of that stuck on dirt that you'll see on some of these mushrooms. But I'm going to make sure to go through and to thoroughly wash all of my stems and the caps of the mushrooms, because both are going to be used in this recipe. I'm going to pull up this bowl next to me so that I have something to place the clean mushrooms in, just to kind of keep track of what's clean and what's not clean, so that I don't accidentally miss a mushroom or two and it's got some grit or nastiness in it. But once I'm done cleaning my mushrooms, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put them back into my colander, and now I'm going to separate my caps from my stems. The reason you're doing this is the caps are going to be cooked separately from your stems, and the stems are actually going to be used as part of the filling for your mushrooms. This way you use every part of your mushroom and you're not just discarding the stems of the mushroom. So when you decap these, I just like to take a firm hold on the cap, hold on the stem, and whoops, yep, see, it just popped right out. And you can see that it's completely empty. If there's any pieces of your stem left in here, you're going to want to remove them. Now I'm going to put my stem in the bowl, and I'm going to put this back in with the other mushrooms. You might find that some mushrooms are easier to destem than others. I like when they just pop out like this, but you might have some that have pieces that just need to be picked out. And it's okay if you leave some of the stem in here, but then it just takes up room for your yummy filling. So you want to try to make sure you get as much of the stem out so that you have as much room as you possibly can to put the filling. So now that I've separated my stems from my caps, I'm actually going to go ahead and hand shred these stems, and that's going to kind of pulverize them a little bit and pull them apart, make them easier to work into our filling for the rest of the mushrooms. I'm sure that if you wanted to put these into a food processor too, that might speed up the process. However, I've never done that, so I'm not sure how that will impact this recipe. But if you want to kind of play around with it, and then leave in the comments below once you've tried this recipe on your own, how well it worked with using the food processor. Now that I've got all of my stems shredded, I'm going to go ahead and take all of my caps and I'm going to place them on a plate with the opening down. The reason for this being is that at some point we're going to pop these bad boys into the microwave for 2-minute increments, and the reason we're doing that is we're actually cooking the mushroom cap, but these are notorious for weeping, so it's important to leave these dished where the stem was actually in down, because if you don't, you leave them up like this, you're going to have your mushroom weep, but then you're going to have all of those fluids right here where your stem used to be. So it's a lot easier to go ahead and face them down so that when they weep, it just comes out on your plate, and it's a lot easier to dispose of. So now I'm just going to go ahead and take the bigger plate full of mushrooms and I'm going to pop it into my microwave for 2 minutes, because while that's going, I'm going to start working on my filling. I found if while you're working on your filling, putting the mushroom caps in the microwave kind of helps to cut down on the overall time of this recipe. because sometimes it can feel like it takes a long time, and sometimes it does take a long time. While my mushroom caps are actually in this microwave cooking, I'm going to start working on the filling for our stuffed mushrooms. So the first things that we're going to be adding to my filling are going to be cream cheese, milk, flour, and some seasoning. And my general tip here is not to use too much of any of these ingredients. Start slowly. Start with a small amount and work your way up so that you're not making it too creamy right off the bat, or if it's too doughy because you've added too much flour to your milk to begin with. You want to add these ingredients in slowly to get the correct consistency and taste that you're looking for, because the one thing that I do like about this recipe is that you can kind of make it your own. You could add more onion if you like it more oniony, or more garlic if you like garlic. So I've got this entire block of cream cheese. I'm probably going to use 3/4 of it to begin with. And I found that it's easy to just go right up about 3/4. And then from here, I'm going to cut it up into smaller blocks because it's going to make it easier to manipulate in to your filling, and it's going to make it easier to cook this in the microwave as well. I'm just going to add these cubes of cream cheese in here. Go ahead, fold this bad boy back up just to keep him nice and moist. Put it to the side. Next, I'm going to be adding a little bit of milk. And my rule of thumb here is that I add enough milk to where I can barely see it coming through the stems. So here, you guys can see what I'm talking about. It is just barely able to see the milk peeking up through the shredded stems. So now I'm going to get a tablespoon, and I'm going to get my flour. So then I'm going to just kind of dust it all over in here. I'm going to start with 2 tablespoons of flour, and now I'm just going to kind of give this a mix, and you'll find that this is easy to remember because now that I've mixed this in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop it into the microwave for 2-minute increments. A lot of these things that we're cooking today, the caps go in for 2-minute increments and the dip goes in for 2-minute increments, because I found if you leave it in there longer, then you get crusty sides of your dip or your filling, and it makes it taste a little bit icky. So we're gonna change places with the caps, and you guys can see that these caps have started to brown up, and I'm gonna kind of play ring around the rosy here. So when I put my filling in, I take my caps out. When I bring my filling back out to add either flour or milk, cream cheese, seasoning, and bacon, I'll put the caps back in and let them go for 2 minutes. That way you're just constantly switching things out, and it makes this recipe move along a lot faster. So I'm gonna go ahead and put in my filling. Close her up, 2 minutes, and we wait. And while I'm waiting for those to come out, I cooked my bacon this morning, and it's nice and hard, but in order to put these in, I'm just gonna take some meat shears here and just cut it up into smaller pieces so that when I'm ready to put the bacon in, I usually don't put this in until about the last step of the dip. That way it's ready to just kind of dump in. And this is hard enough too. If you need to crumple with your hands, that's totally fine. If you have meat shears handy and you don't want to get all the bacon, which who doesn't want to have their hands smell like bacon all day? But I digress. You just want to cut it in small enough pieces where it's going to mix into your filling really well, and that you won't have too many big pieces just kind of sticking out of your stuffed mushrooms. It helps it to disperse evenly throughout the filling and to cook and to give off its own seasoning and flavor to your dip. So I'm going to use 6 pieces of bacon total, and obviously this is one of those ingredients that you can use as much of or as little of as you prefer. So don't be shy with your bacon. If you love bacon and your guests are going to love bacon, and bacon's going to make it taste better like bacon always does, add as much as you'd like. And I found if you use crispy bacon, this goes a lot better because then it kind of like crumbles. But those fat pieces sometimes are really nice too because they're the ones that are going to get off the most flavor in your filling. I think it's pretty good. So I just pulled our filling out of the microwave, and you guys can see like it's still pretty soupy, but it does heat up this cream cheese to where it's much easier to mix it in. So you guys can see like as we're mixing this in and dispersing the heat more evenly, this is becoming like a really, really creamy dip. I keep saying dip, but it's a filling. But one of the things that we found in my household, that I tend to make a lot more filling than is used for these mushrooms, and they're wonderful as like just a cracker spread or like a dip for chips or something like that. So this is still a little bit watery, so I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit more flour to the mix, and now I'm going to introduce seasonings as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of evenly disperse that. When I add my flour, I do go in tablespoon increments, and usually it's 2. Rules of 2 are kind of a big thing on this. So I'm going to go ahead and just start mixing this in. I've got minced onion. I'm going to just give this a couple really good shakes in there. I've got my garlic powder, which we use so much of in my house. Just give it there. This is one of those things where it's totally up to preference. If you like more onion, add more onion. If you like more garlic, add more garlic, and vice versa if you don't like either one of those things. I'm gonna go ahead and mix that in really good. Pop it back in the oven. Now that these are done, I'm gonna take out the dip, the filling. I'm gonna pop caps back in for another 2 minutes. You can tell that there's a really big consistency change. It's starting to thicken because of the flour that's been added. So I think I'm probably done on flour. And the reason for that being is I'm still going to be adding in seasonings along with bacon, so that I don't want to overcook this with it being almost to the right consistency, because as we keep putting it in here, it's going to be pulling out more and more moisture from your filling. So it's pretty much right where I want it to be, but I do need to taste test this. What's important about taste testing this to make sure it's up to snuff for you or your guests is that when you are trying things, do not use the same spoon to try over and over. It's a lot like someone double dipping with a chip, and nobody likes the double dipper. So either use multiple spoons or make sure that you're washing them thoroughly between your taste testing. So I've got my taste testing spoon. There we go. So I'm just going to It's pretty close. This is pretty close. I've nailed the garlic, but I think I might need just a little bit more onion. And that's the good thing about this. You can kind of just keep adding seasonings, or if you want this to be runnier, you would add more milk. If you wanted it creamier, you would add the rest of your cream cheese. I really appreciate the versatility of this recipe for that reason. If you like more onion, you add onion. If you want it to be creamier, you add more cream cheese. If you want it to be a little bit more runny, you add some more milk. It's really versatile and is open to a lot of different types of palates for people that like different types of tastes. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna put in my bacon bits. Try to thoroughly mix these in. I'll probably just give it one more go in the microwave before I'm going to actually let this sit in the fridge to stiffen up. Now that I've popped out these mushroom caps, they're almost there, but what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna let them rest. And here's why. You guys can see now underneath that these guys are weeping quite a bit. There's a lot of juices there, and they'll continue to weep. Actually, you can see like right in there that there's already a lot of juice is still weeping. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave these guys out and let them weep for a little bit. It's okay to leave them at room temperature for a little bit, but if you decide to walk away from them for an extended amount of time, it's probably just best to pop them into your refrigerator and let them weep there so that they don't sit out at room temperature too long and spoil. All right, this should be the last time that the filling is in the microwave. And you guys can see the general consistency. So it wants to kind of hold on to the spoon, but it's easy to just shake it out. If it were to clump to the spoon, I would say that it probably needs either more cream cheese or a touch more milk, because then it's getting just like too doughy. Unless that's what you like, in which case, go for it. Leave it at that consistency, but and vice versa. If this were just like falling out super easy, it was really runny, you just add a little bit more flour. So you guys can see this is the right consistency. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to put this into my refrigerator to help to cool it down, because we actually can't add the cheese into this mixture at the temperature that it is. So I'm going to leave this in my refrigerator for about an hour to help it to set, cool down, because if we put in our cheddar cheese, which we use a mildly sharp cheddar cheese, if I put it in at this heat, it's just going to become a slimy mess. And you kind of want it to be warm enough to let it melt a little bit, but you don't want to liquefy your cheddar, because then it's just going to make it a lot runnier than it needs to be. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this into the fridge. Now it is literally just a waiting game. I usually give my mushrooms and my filling a full hour to weep and to set before we move on to our next step. You can see that it's completely hardened up and it's cooled off. So now we're going to go ahead and take our cheddar cheese. And I have a little bit left over in this bag, so you can see it's probably about a third of the way full. I'm just gonna liberally put it in there, stop, and then I'm just going to kind of stir everything in. I like how this adds color to the filling. It just makes it a little bit more festive and a little bit more inviting. So I'm gonna go ahead and put just a little bit more in, finish up the rest of this bag. And you can add more if you want more cheese, or you can add less. It just kind of depends. Just make sure to mix it really thoroughly. You can see now it looks a lot more inviting. So now that I'm done with that, I'm actually going to grab my mushroom caps, and I'm going to get a different plate to switch these over onto. Just because sometimes it's just easier to take them away from the weeping fluids than it is to kind of pat them dry and use the same plate. So I've just got a regular paper towel here, and I'm just gonna kind of pat dry. This kind of just helps to remove any moisture from the inside, and you guys can tell, like, there's still quite a bit of moisture, even though these guys have been in the fridge and have been weeping for about an hour. That way it doesn't make your filling runny either when you put it in there. So here we go. Because this isn't the last time that we've popped them into the microwave. When we put our filling on these and top dress with the cheddar cheese, we're going to be putting these in the microwave right before we're ready to serve them. I know that some people might not like that this is done in the microwave, but it's just really easy. Most homes have a microwave in them. If you don't and you need to do these in the oven, I'd love to hear about your experience. Because so now that they've all had their filling put in, now it's time to go ahead and top them with some more fancy shredded cheddar cheese. Gives it a little bit more color, and if you wanted to make it even more inviting with another pop of color, green onions would be wonderful on top of these. I've had lots of different types of shredded mushrooms, and they didn't all have bacon in them like I've chosen to use here. This is just what my family has always made them with. But I've had a lot of different stuffed mushrooms that had spicy sausage in it, or lobster, or crab. So if you want to try different proteins in here rather than the bacon, go for it. The reason we're going to top dress this with just plain cheddar cheese is this is actually going to go into the microwave for another 2 minutes right before serving. All right, guys, that's gonna do it for us here on Mulberry Branch Farm on our recipe for stuffed mushrooms. I hope that you enjoyed them, and I really hope that if you decide to use this recipe or that you replicate it in any way, that you would drop that down in the comments, because you might have a recipe or additions to your recipe that I like and would like to try in my own recipe. So thanks so much for being here with us today. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, let us know by dropping us a like, leaving us a comment, and subscribing. But until next time, guys, we'll catch you in the next one. Make sure that you're being kind to one another out there and staying safe. God bless. Bye, y'all.